Our next session is building and sustaining high-performing teams. And I would now like to welcome on stage our moderator, Mr. Ramesh Krishnamurthy, and our speaker, Mr. Rajesh Balaji Ramachandran. Can we have a round of applause, everyone, for our next eminent speakers?
Okay. The two sessions are very tough. One is before lunch and immediately after the lunch. Just to quickly introduce, I think I'm Ramesh Krishnamurthy. I'm a president at Indium Software, which is basically a digital engineering services firm. We are into app engineering, data engineering. And also I'm part of SME Council. I'm a SME Council member. That's a brief about me. Rajesh, you want to give a liner, two-liner?
Yeah, thanks, Ramesh. Good afternoon and pleasure to be here. Rajesh Balaji, part of a company called Catling's Partners. Catling's Partners is a growth advisory company. It's a new model that we are trying where a bunch of us all of us used to work in a company called Cognizant. We've been there, most of us had been there in the company for a little over 2 decades. We left that and started this company with a view to help small and medium enterprises scale and grow.
Thank you, Rajesh, and really appreciate you to join this session. We're going to talk about building and sustaining high-performance teams.
Something different from AI.
Yeah, absolutely. And the whole morning, I think many of you would know that we talk about technology. We spoke about AI. We spoke about lot of. When he was asked, what is his biggest mistake? Okay, he says, sometimes he has been ruthless. He was not been ruthless enough when someone's performance, while not catastrophic, has not been far from stellar. I quote, the toughest thing is to deal with people that we call 70%. I repeat, the toughest thing is to deal with people that we call 70%. These are the people that have all the right answers and logical and intelligent excuses, but they don't really get it right. To then have the self-confidence to change that person early enough, that is the hardest part, and that is where I have made the most mistakes, given them too much time. Okay, so I think coming from a person who manages several companies and things like that, what it means to building a high-performance team is well said. With that, I think the first question that comes is primarily, given that we need to scale the teams, how do you really, Rajesh, I know that you come from a Cognizant, which has been like a journey, hundreds of people at employee company to about lakhs of employees, and you have seen several things through that journey. What is that, how do you go about building those kind of structures in place when it comes to, or probably even before coming to the structures, assessing the right people that are required for you to build the teams, the assessment of employees, assessment of the organization?
I think it's a very important aspect, right? It's because as you look to build an organization or as you look to build any teams, one of the most important aspects which often gets overlooked is ambition. Right? We often go and say that, hey, this person is extremely talented, let's recruit this person for the team. They'll play a good job, they're perfect fit for the job. But what we don't assess in interviews or in any discussion is how ambitious are they? Right? When we are a small or a medium, when we are a small company, it's extremely important for you to have people with a lot of ambition. Right? Because in my past life, right, we've looked at a lot of companies for acquisition and all that, and most often than not, we've found that companies are lifestyle companies, right? In our current job, which is at Catling's, so far in the last 3 years, we've looked at about 50 companies, and we are working with 3 of them, right? And one of the main reasons why we we are very choosy about the companies that we work with is because you can replace everything, but you can't replace ambition, right? So that ambition is extremely important, and that's what drives a lot of things, right? Because when you don't have that ambition, it's very easy, right, for a small company to say, hey, if the 50 crore of revenue at 10 times margin, at 10% margin, it's 5 crores a year. The founders are very happy with that money. You can tend to be extremely happy and start meandering in that zone. But the only thing that will take you out of the zone is ambition, right? So my suggestion will be, I've always looked for, whenever I've looked for my teams in the past, and the company that, at Cognizant, if you have looked at it, this was a company where I joined when we were less than 500 people, and when I left, we were about 3 lakh people. One thing that was always there is a lot of ambition, right? So that I think is the most important aspect when we start building teams. Look for people with a lot of ambition.
Thank you. I think that's well said, Rajesh. I think ambition keeps you going. And also you said lifestyle, not only the organization, but also the employees. Yeah. I think it's important that you just don't look at those as your lifestyle, maintaining lifestyle and things like that. Now, there are several books, and we go through, say, serious training programs on building companies, on managing performance and things like that, right? But when you come back and start your day-to-day work, it's your day-to-day thing that you get sucked into that. So how do you really, maybe 1, 2, 3 things that are important from a point of view of how do you go about building teams that will sustain for long?
See, I think, first of all, you spoke about a lot of books and classes and all that, right? So I think it's important that you keep reading your books, but they say that reading books should be a hobby. It can't be a job in itself, right? So, I'll tell you what's worked for me, right? Saying, first of all, when you're trying to build your teams, it's extremely important that you look for talent that's better than you, right? Say, it's a very difficult thing. I have made mistakes in the past where you always look for people who are similar to you, people who you think, hey, they will come and work for me types, but instead you should say that, hey, people should be better than me. That's one important trait that you should have when you look to build the teams. Once when you have decided, hey, this is the person, these are the type of profiles that we want to have, go about recruiting people. You should always be recruiting not for the immediate need. You should be recruiting for a year or 2 years down the line. What I meant by that is, you should have enough talent in the company to take the company from where it is today for the next year. If you are going to the market, if you say that, hey, I want to build the teams to take the company in the next year or the year after, then I think there is something wrong with the way you have set it up. Make sure that, hey, the talent is more 2-3 years later. Right? So most of the companies that we advise, or even at Cognizant, we always used to have teams which were a lot more than what we need. Right? That will then get to the question saying that, hey, if I have to have so many teams, so much in the leadership, where do I have the money to invest in other areas? Right? I would say the best investment that you can do is in the team. Right?
So yeah, I mean, I think very well said, and that relates to another question, which I'm talking all these points on behalf of the audience, SME. Kapil Sharma always says that, right? I'm asking on behalf of everyone. So that's what I'm doing here. So from an SME point of view, talent, what you said, building is important. But how do you go about really attracting those talent? I have an ambition. You said you need to have the ambition in my team to grow and things like that, and how you build that. How do I go about and attracting the talent? The attraction of the talent could be from a larger companies or a different size of the companies as I might come from. So how do you go about attracting the talent?
So very good question, Ramesh, right? Because as a small company, we don't have the brand. Right? We don't have the brand to like a large organization. Neither do we have the cash like a large organization to attract talent using salary. But one thing in my experience I've always seen is compensation is by far the least of the tools that attracts people to a company. Right? When somebody is leaving, right? For example, there are people who have left large organizations and have joined the small organizations that we are advising. They are doing things in the small organization which they would never have done in the large organization. Okay? So you have your own areas as to why somebody should join a company, right? So let's take, even if you take the case of the company that you're working for, or any of the other companies, why would somebody leave an Accenture or a Cognizant or a TCS or Infosys or Wipro and come and join a smaller company? It is because they get to do things which are very different. Right? I'll give you an example in our earlier company, Cognizant, when we were much smaller. We used to have advertisements which said, doing big things early. We said, at Cognizant, you do big things early. And that was the brand that we had, right? So, and I vividly remember this video that we used to play in campuses to attract talent, where there'll be a young boy who will be going and practicing cricket in the nets. As soon as he practices cricket in the nets, he'll come out, take his pen and take the bat and start practicing autographs. Right? Which is like, he's doing big things early, right? He's already starting to sign autographs when he was a young boy, right? So so the way it is every organization, don't try to use cash as a way to attract talent. Try to use the quality of work, and also in the initial days, you will have to go through your network. Right? It is through your network, the quality of work. Somebody who is joining the company as a president would never get to be a president in a large organization. So you should look for those people with the ambition and get them on board. And then the question then, yes, cash is important, right? Your compensation is important. How are you going to compensate them? That is where something that a small organization can do, which a large organization can't do, is to share your wealth. Right? A company which is, say, about $20 million today, in the next 2 to 3 years, can become a $100 million company. Right? Your TCS is not going to go from $30 billion to about $150 billion in the next 5 years. It's impossible for them to grow at that pace. So the wealth creation opportunities that are going to be there in the smaller organizations is higher.
Okay, so that's a good perspective. So when we get this talent, as you said, attracting the talent and from a larger companies and different companies you bring in, there is always this, SME companies growing from that perspective, where we always have this, trust and the psychological safety. I'm an old timer in the organization. There's a new bunch of talent that has come, how do you go about addressing those?
I think that is not just relevant for a small SME company, right? It's relevant for even large organizations, where the sins of insecurity or people inside feel insecure when we add a lot of talent from outside, right? Few things. First and foremost is that you look at it from the perspective of the people joining you from outside. They are equally insecure about the organization, right? So one thing that's always worked for me in my past life is, in a large organization, I always used to recruit only one in my direct report every year. Right? If I had a team of about 7 people, one of them will be fresh from outside, because they bring in a different perspective. Right? That is one thing that I do. Second thing is, we have to be very genuine. You can't try to, either to your internal team or to the staff outside, right? You have to be very, very genuine. Meaning, don't try to say things to please them. This is what it is, right? This is what you are. This is what the company is. And that people who are either joining or people internally should get used to it. People internally should also get used to the fact that, hey, there are going to be people from outside coming in, right? See, because there will be times, right? So, organization grows at a certain stage, certain pace. And there will be times when individuals will find it hard to keep pace with the organization's growth. Right? So it is, as the founder, as the owners of the company, it's important for the founders of the companies to make sure that the team runs a race which is faster than what the organization is running.
You brought in a very important aspect, Rajesh, by saying the founders, right? I think the smaller companies and medium, majority of them run by founders. And founders play a crucial role because they bring in the vision, mission, and also inspire people, employees. So when they scale, they wear multiple hats. So how do you go about one focusing on what, how do you bring in the focus element, right? Because many of us find that you get into too much of operational aspects and things like that. Second is when you're also bringing in the lateral talent. We are talking about high-performing teams. A bit of maintenance is required where you need a lot of attention, and there is a cultural aspect. So how do you go about a smaller organization to a mid-size organization address those?
I think any organization, there are three key aspects in terms of running the company, right? One is the culture of the company. Second is your strategy, and third is execution. Okay, you will be able to get a lot of talent from outside for the second and the third part of it, right? You'll get some best thinkers to come and help you with strategy. Similarly, you'll be able to recruit people to come and execute things as per the strategy and all that. But as the founder, one thing that is totally your responsibility is the culture of the company. Right? You define what should be the culture of the company. Right? I'll give you another example from my past life, right? I'm at Cognizant, where the most important, there are two aspects of the culture of the company that were there, right? One was, it was an empowered culture. What that meant was everybody had freedom to do what is in the best interest of the client and the organization. The second thing was a client-centric culture. Right? So these two defined how that company grew. A lot of new capabilities were developed by people. Right? All of us in much younger age had worked on building new capabilities, worked on building new COEs and all of that, right? So, those are things that happen. For almost all the practices of Cognizant were started by some manager at some point of time because they felt, hey, it's good to have this capability. It was not based on a strategy to come and do it, right? So the culture was very, very important. Right? And I also remember a conversation we had with the board of the company at the time, right? It's a US board. The board, they said, our only job is to make sure that the culture of the company is retained. Right? So I would say, as founders, the one thing that you should lose sleep on is the culture of the company changing? Maybe times it should change, but if it is changing, is it as per a conscious decision for it to change? Right? For strategy and execution, get involved, and also understand that, hey, you're recruiting people who are, if you're recruiting people who are better than you from the market, the last thing you want to do is go and tell them what should they do. Right? So recruit them, give them the freedom to do what they should be doing, and as a founder, there are roles that you have to play, which is like be the culture custodian and be the brand ambassador of the company.
That's great insight again. While we are talking about attracting talent, I'm just stuck there. Maybe it's not that difficult for me to find a talent and hire a talent, right? The bigger is that how do I nurture, manage, and retain? And most often, the highly talented people are highly performance-oriented. But the challenge comes when you really want to collaborate and make the high-performing individuals to work as a team and within functions. And the morning we spoke about entire AI, so a lot of use cases. It could be different functions. We talked about HR, we spoke about some delivery, product development, and things like that. So these are all different functions. So these leaders coming from different functions, and the entire AI, if you have to be successful, it has to be a collaborative effort. So how do you go about building that kind of a collaborative work atmosphere?
See, I think a lot of times we tend to mistake, or rather we tend to use the word collaboration and cooperation in they have very different meanings, right? I have seen organizations where there is absolutely no friction. Everybody cooperates with the other. Nobody confronts the other. Right? Collaboration is, in my view, healthy confrontation. Right? You should have healthy confrontation to achieve the results that you want. Right? I've seen teams, I've seen organizations where everyone is a good friend of everybody else, but we don't produce results. Right? Whereas the other organizations where where the meetings are acrimonious, to say the least, right? Saying, hey, if given a sword, they'll probably kill each other in the meeting. But then post the meeting, and it is all issue-based, right? So where I'm heading towards, Ramesh, is collaboration is by far the most important aspect, and collaboration should not be confused with cooperation. We should allow healthy debates to happen in discussions, disagreements to happen, and then let the best emerge out of it. Right? And if we allow the teams to participate in this kind of a discussion and deliberation and come out with the results, I've always seen that the collaboration improves over a period of time.
Is there a way to measure it? Would you suggest any ways? I have a team now in place, and my intention is to grow the organization, grow the company, obviously with the team. What are the ways in which I can put some kind of measurement?
See, we've more than 20 years of my career, I've grown in an organization where we had 4 measures for everybody: revenue, margin, customer satisfaction, and employee satisfaction. We were very proud in saying that we just measured everybody on those four terms, right? Whether you are in admin, you are in finance, you are in HR, sales, or delivery, everybody carried a revenue target, right? So the best way to achieve collaboration will be to make sure that you have lesser number of measures and keep the measures at an abstract level and common for all of them. Imagine a situation where your recruitment team is measured on the revenue of the company. Right? At least 50% of everyone's variable pay in the leadership level should be based on revenue. Because if you're focused on growth, let it be based on revenue.
So I like that answer. So usually we have different measures for different functions, okay? Because we also need to see that how each of these individual functions are growing. But you're suggesting that there has to be these 3 or 4 measures which should be the objective, core objective, and everybody should be signed up, and collaboration should be top-down push. Is that what you're alluding to?
So I think sort of yes and no, right? What I mean by that is, keep the measures simple, keep the measures consistent across, and that will drive collaboration. Okay? What you measure and what you manage can be different. For when you look at a recruitment function, you can measure, your average cost of recruitment, the number of people a recruiter is making an offer. You can do all that. But what you manage is just, give them a measure on revenue. Ultimately, you can recruit some of the best talent, but if the revenue of the company doesn't move, it doesn't help.
I think we are running out of time. I have one last question before I think we want to engage with the audience. So one mantra to build and sustain high performance team.
So we are in Chennai, and it's the land of CSK, right? You can't not refer to CSK or the cricket team and get out from here, right? So the thing is, everybody should think that they are the captain of the team, right? If you're a founder, or even if you're a manager, you're only a captain of the team. There are 10 others who have their job cut out, and you should enable them to do their job in their own way, right? You are a captain. You cannot be everywhere in the field, and you cannot play every role. That is why you have a team. Get them on board, give them the freedom to do what they have to do. And first of all is acknowledging the fact that, hey, there are 10 others who have very different roles to play, which you cannot play those roles.
Thank you very much, Rajesh, for wonderful insights. And I like that, be the captain like Dhoni and things like that. So we are almost time up, but then we'll open for a few questions. Question there. Can you please pass on the mic?
Yes, we are having the mic passed right there.
Sir, when we build a company, the company is something like that changes continuously. For example, it will grow from 5 to 10, 100, something like that, okay? Like managing the growth will become a very challenge when financial burden comes, for example, recession or something like that. We may have very high ambition, but the external factors are also should be taken into account. Okay, so at the times of recession or times of hardships, how the founders should play, how the senior management should play.
I think again I'll go back to what our Captain Cool always keeps saying, right? He says there are two things: there are controllables and there are uncontrollables, right? There are things which are a macroeconomic situation, a recession hitting, or in my career I've seen 9/11, the 2008 financial crisis, then this whole COVID crisis, everything happens, right? But what is very important is control what is controllable for you, which means during those difficult times, what are those things that are important? Being closer to the client, that's probably the number one stuff. Second is making sure you have your employees together, right? Keep them together. Keep doing these two basic things. There is only one thing certain about a hard time, is that the hard time will end at some point of time. Right? There is nothing that is certain about hard times. It's only that it will end at some time. And you should be prepared to capture the opportunity that comes up after the hard time ends. Right? And if you look at all the large organizations, if you look at their trajectory, most of them have failed to capture the growth curve that happens after the hard time ends. Right? So I gave a very long answer. The short answer is, you can't control some of the hard times. You only control the things that are in your control, which is just make sure you keep doing the basic things right.
Running a marathon versus a sprint?
Absolutely.
Thank you for your time, sir. Good afternoon. Two questions. Number one, you keep one person outside for a new perspective who is a direct reportee to you. And how do you make sure he sustains the internal fire? Number one. Number two, people becoming, retention as a flip side. You have people working for a longer period of time, they become very complacent and not welcoming, receptive to the new ideas. The appetite goes low as they grow old in the system. How do you deal with them? But they are very loyal. But when you look at the competency or the appetite to grow, it is on the lower side is what we experience. What is your suggestion on those two? See,
sometimes this appetite to grow is sometimes it can be a very transient phenomenon, meaning they think there will be times when people will go through, as individuals they'll go through ups and downs, and it's important that we support them during the ups and downs when they go through in their life. There may be a lot of life events that will pull them down and all that. Keeping that aside, if by nature somebody tapers off or somebody's ambition levels go down, and to the first point of keeping the fire within, one thing that's always helped me is to have a good mix in the team. That's why they talk about the word diversity, right? Diversity has a lot of different meanings. Bring in people with that ambition. If you continuously add your team with the people with that ambition over a period of time, your internal teams I've always seen have sustained and kept pace with it. But in spite of all of these things, if there is somebody who has not kept pace with it, it is extremely important to have that open conversation with that individual to say that, hey, everybody else is running at a certain pace, and if the person is pulling everyone down, it's important to have that open conversation with that person.
I like that question from the initial quote. We started it saying that what is the appetite of it and things like that. So very, very relevant, and how do we go about identifying those people. And one of the things probably what I also read in the quote is that you need to give the right intervention and training to the identify, because you also mentioned loyalty, which is very, very important. So from that standpoint, you go about identifying and give the right amount of intervention to provide the space for learning and development.
Rajesh, Manivanan here. I'm just trying to recollect what you said essentially at the time of recruitment. You said one of the key parameter which you possibly looked at is ambition, right? Or while I look at a different parameter too in the form of attitude, right? Now my question is, okay, I have two questions. My second question is dependent on your first response. So when you say what is the kind of an ambition which you have, what do you mean? Is it the senior level perspective you're referring to, or the medium level, or the junior guys? That's my first question.
See,
looking at the attitude, looking at the ambition part which you said.
See, when you're building an organization, right, saying, the junior talent is extremely important, okay? By default, people in that age, my assumption is there is a lot of ambition in that team, right? So what you should be very careful about is in the mid and the senior level, where when you reach a certain point of time, you will start tending towards, this attitude of it's enough, being complacent can creep in, right? And there is no right way to assess what is the ambition in that person. Right?
Absolutely.
So it's what your gut feel says when you have the discussion with the person.
My second question was related to that. Since you said the junior level, right, while the medium and senior is a different ballgame altogether, help me understand from your experience, while choice of a person with respect to the ambition, what will be the kind of a success rate which you have encountered in your past?
It's a very interesting question, right? So, it's the choice of success in terms of the individual, I think is always been, the person has been with the right ambition. Where we have failed is when you have too many ambitious people around, the whole aspect of what Ramesh brought about collaboration. There will be people, sometimes ambitious people tend to be individual contributors, and that is something that we should watch out for. Yeah.
I'll add to that from an Indium perspective in my company. Your question is very important, right? I mean, the Gen Z, how do you really assess them? So one of the things that we know that they are all objective driven. So find out when we do the recruitment, what are those objectives that they are going after? And if those objectives are met with the company's objectives, and if you're able to correlate that, it's just a magic. I mean, I have seen people spending 7 days and not even going back home, or they are available all the time. You are in Teams, in WhatsApp, you say within seconds the response comes. When you are working on some R&D or some pilots and things like that, those guys are fantastic.
And that brings me to the same point what I said in terms of attitude. Isn't it so? What your reference here is more so pertaining to the attitude part of it as compared to the ambition part of it also.
Yeah,
isn't
that's
it?
true. That is true. Yeah.
Thank you. We have one more question over here. Can we have the mic passed in the front?
Hello, Rajesh. High performance teams, I think that's possible only if there's a lot of engagement. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
So, I know this is not an easy answer, but could you give us the top 3 things that you would recommend that we do in order to create a sort of an engaged team or an engaged workforce?
I don't think there is any silver bullet, right? I'll give you an example, or rather I'll give you from my individual life, or rather my experience, something that struck me very hard, okay? So there was this client of mine, right? This is a UK-based company. They had a training director, right? One day the training director said, I want to come and visit Cognizant in India and also the other vendors that the company works with. He was here and we were chatting up over lunch and all that, right? So, and because he comes from a training background and he's written books and all that, right? So he asked me a very interesting question, right? He asked me saying, tell me about, what do you know about the personal life of your top performer? Then he asked me about the personal life of whom I consider as the bottom performer in my direct report. And that was an eye-opener for me because I knew very little about the personal side of the person whom I was considering as a bottom performer. Right? That goes to your point saying that, hey, as at the individual level, it is important for you to engage with everybody. And the more you engage with the person, the more better will their performance be.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, truly an insightful and informative session. Can we have a big round of applause for our speakers? May I please request Mr. Saurabh Mishra to please join us on stage to present a token of gratitude to our eminent speakers here. Once again, thank you so much for joining us here. It was truly a pleasure to hear from you.